David. He is the person who came up with the net income approach. The assumptions of the net income approach are, this approach is based on 3 assumptions. The very first one is there are no taxes, and this assumption was there in the basic assumptions as well, but this assumption is removed later. While solving some of the sums, taxes also will be taken into account. Then use of debt does not change the risk perception of the investors. So they say when you borrow more and more, the investors will not feel that the company is risky. So use of debt does not change the risk perception of the investors, which is again wrong, because if I've invested in certain company, I will always check its debt equity ratio. That means I'll basically check whether the company has borrowed more than required. If that is the case, then I will not invest in that company because its risk is very high. So in real life, people check the risk and the borrowing that the company has done. But here in the assumption, they say the more you borrow, it will not affect the risk and the investor will not think it is very risky. And debt is less costlier, or cost of debt is less than the cost of equity. So this is another assumption. It happens most of the time, but it is not always true. So this is put under assumptions. According to this approach, the capital structure decision is relevant to the valuation of the firm. Now, what do we mean by the word relevant? It basically means that your capital structure decision will have an impact on valuation of the firm. So if you have 50% debt, 50% equity, from that, if you change to 60% debt and 40% equity, your value of firm will also change. If you make 60 equity, 40 debt, your value of firm will also change. So what we are trying to study according to this approach is, if you change your capital structure, that means your debt equity borrowing mix, if you change, it will have an impact on the value of the firm. So here relevant means it will have an impact. Okay, so we'll see how it will work. A change in the capital structure causes an overall change in the cost of capital and also in the total value of the firm. So if I change the capital structure, it will in turn, if I change the capital structure, it will in turn change the cost of capital and the value of the firm. So it has an impact. That means change in one is changing the other. A higher debt content in the capital structure means high financial leverage, and this results in decline in the overall weighted average cost of capital. Therefore, there is increase in the value of the firm. So what they're trying to tell here is, when you borrow more and more, as we all know that the assumption says debt is cheaper than equity. So when debt is cheaper and you borrow more from debt, your cost will come down because you are opting for a cheaper source of finance. And if your cost will come down, the value of the firm will increase. So net income approach is trying to tell you, the more you borrow, the less will be the cost and the more will be the value of the firm. So according to them, borrowing is good because debt is cheaper than equity, or debt is less costlier than equity. Thus, with the cost of debt and the cost of equity being constant, the increased use of debt, that means increase in leverage. Leverage is nothing but risk, borrowing or debt, will magnify the shareholders' earning and thereby the market value of ordinary shares. So he also assumes that the cost of equity and the cost of debt are constant. They will not change. Once you decide it, it will remain same. And as cost of debt is cheaper than cost of equity, if you borrow more and more, it will help to magnify your earnings, and therefore the shareholders' value also will increase. So these are the formulas that we will be using. So net income basically means EBIT minus I. From earning before interest and tax, you minus interest, you will get earnings available to equity shareholders. So that is termed as, because they have assumed no taxes, they are not minusing T here. From EBIT, they are minusing only I. But in the sums, if tax rate is given, then we will do EBIT minus I minus T. And then we'll find the earnings available to equity holders. Value of the firm, to find the value of the firm, you should know the market value of debt and the market value of equity. Overall cost of capitalization, that is K naught, is equals to EBIT divided by V. So to find the total cost of capitalization, we'll have to have these two values: earning before interest and tax and value of the firm. V is the value of the firm. Or this is the second formula, which says K naught, that is overall cost of capital, is equals to KI is the cost of debt and B by V is the weightage of debt. KE is the cost of equity, S by V is the weightage of equity. And here they are using B and S to denote debt and equity. What I want to know from you is, you want to call them as B and S, or we'll call debt as D and equity as E. Usually we call it D and E because it's easy to remember. This new terms B and S will become difficult to remember. So I'll call it debt as D and equity as E when we solve the sums. Is that okay?
Okay, ma'am.
So these are the formulas. When we solve the sum, I will rewrite them in the Word. So that time you can copy, or else I have shared the slides with you yesterday only. You can even take it from there. So this is the graph that you will get after you solve a problem on net income approach. And if you put it in a graphical mode, this is how it will look like. This side, on the y-axis, you have cost of capital, and on the x-axis, you have degree of leverage. By degree of leverage, we mean how much you're borrowing, the debt borrowing. So 1 lakh, 2 lakh, 5 lakh, whatever you borrow, you write it on the x-axis, and whatever is the cost of that borrowing, we write it on the y-axis. Now, according to the net income approach, cost of equity and cost of debt are constant. They're constant at whatever amount you borrow. You borrow 1 lakh, or you borrow 10 lakh, or you borrow 50 lakh. The percentage cost, I'm trying to say. So if cost of debt is 10% and equity is 15%, that percentage will remain constant. Therefore, at whatever level you borrow, your cost of debt and cost of equity are same. So they're shown as straight lines. What will reduce is the average cost of capital. So that's why it is showing a slanting line. Average cost of capital is nothing but weighted average cost of capital. As you borrow more and more, and when you're borrowing, the cost of debt you see is lower than the cost of equity. The line is below cost of equity. So as you borrow more at lower cost, your total cost will go on falling down. So when we do the first sum, you will see such kind of a pattern coming up. Tomorrow or in the next class, we'll start net operating income theory. Today, we will start with the sums of net income approach. Is it visible clearly?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
We are doing sums on net income approach. So these are the formulas. Instead of B and V, I will call it as debt and equity. So debt I'll write D and equity I will write E. So here there is no B, but it is D, debt, and S is your E, equity. Okay, so we're going to use these formulas. So let's start with the first problem. The first three problems are interlinked. So with that, I will show you the graph also properly. A company expects annual net operating income of rupees 50,000. This is nothing but your EBIT. The company has rupees 2 lakh 10% debentures. The equity capitalization rate of the company is 12.5%. Assume that there are no taxes and calculate the value of the firm as well as the overall cost of capital. You can write here using net income approach. We are going to solve it in the tabular way, like an income statement. So I insert a table, particulars and amount. So in the income statement, we always start with sales and then we reduce all the cost and reach to EBIT. But here the sales value and all other costs are not given. They have directly given you the net operating income. Annual net operating income is 50,000, which is nothing but your EBIT. So directly the EBIT value is given. We can take it here. EBIT is 50,000 for the firm. From EBIT, what we do, we always minus interest first. So here we write less interest. Now, how much is the interest? Interest is the company has rupees 2 lakh 10% debentures. So how much they are borrowing? They are borrowing rupees 2 lakh into the rate of interest is 10%. So 10 divided by 100 if I do, I get a 10%. That comes to 20,000. When you minus it, you will get the value of EBT. There are no taxes given, so we will call it EBT, or we will also call it as net income because there are no taxes given. So this itself becomes a net income. If tax was given, I would have done minus tax and then taken net income. So 50,000 minus 20,000, 30,000 is our net income. Till here, any doubts? I have just taken the value of EBIT and then considered that the debentures are 2 lakh with 10% interest minus the interest and derived at net income. That is this, the first formula. We have come till this level. Net income is EBIT minus I. Okay. Any doubts still here?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Okay. Now see what they have asked us to find. Calculate the value of the firm as well as the overall cost of capital. So they want us to calculate value of the firm and weighted average cost of capital. So how to find the value of the firm? There is a formula for value of the firm. Just observe this one. Value of the firm is market value of debt plus market value of equity. So we have to find these two things first. Now I should find what is the market value of debt and then find what is the market value of equity. If I add both of them, I'll get the value of the firm. So how do we find market value of debt and equity? Let's start with the market value of debt first. Now to find the market value of debt, we'll use the formula I divided by KD. Okay, what is I? I is nothing but interest. How much interest we are paying? 20,000. So I will take interest 20,000 divided by cost of debt. In the question they have given you, if you observe here, 10% debentures. So this 10% is the cost of debt. So I have to do 20,000 divided by 10% means it is 0.1. If I convert it to decimals, 10 divided by 100 is 0.1. So 20,000, that is I, divided by KD 0.1. I will get the value of debt. That is how much? ₹2 lakh. Any doubts still here?
No, ma'am.
And if you see, this 2 lakh is also given in the question, but I'm still showing that one step so that you know how to find the market value of debt. This is the formula that we'll use for market value of debt. I'll write the full form. I is nothing but interest divided by KD is nothing but cost of debt. Okay, so I interest is 20,000 and cost of debt is 10%. Similarly, we'll find the market value of equity. The formula for market value of equity is NI divided by KE. NI is nothing but net income divided by KE is cost of equity. So we'll put it in the formula. Net income, if you see in the table, the first part of the table is just to find the value of interest and net income. Using that, we can find the market value of debt and equity. So how much is the net income? How much should I take?
30,000.
30,000. 30,000 is the net income divided by cost of equity is given here in the problem. Just observe this. The equity capitalization rate of the company is 12.5%. So this is nothing but the cost of equity. So 12.5% means 0.125. If you do 12.5 divided by 100, you will get it in decimals, that is 0.125. So if I do 30,000 divided by 0.125, I'll get the market value of equity, which is equal to 2,40,000. Now I can find the market value of firm. Which is equal to market value of debt plus market value of equity. So market value of debt I have found out here 2 lakh and market value of equity 2,40,000. I need to add these both. So if you add, how much do you get? 4,40,000. This is the value of the firm. Okay, so this is how you calculate the value of the firm. The first part answer is 4,40,000. Now they have also asked you to find the overall cost of capital. So for that there are two formulas. We'll see if the simple formula works out. We will apply the same. What is the formula for overall cost of capital? It is K0 is equals to EBIT divided by V, or this is a bigger formula. We'll first try for the smaller one. If it doesn't work, then we'll go to this. So EBIT, we have the value of EBIT, which is here 50,000, and V is the market value of the firm, which is 4,40,000. So we have both the values, EBIT and V. So we can use that small formula and find the cost of capital. So K0 is equals to EBIT divided by V. EBIT is 50,000. Divided by value of the firm, we found out 4,40,000. If you do into 100, you will get it in percentage. Otherwise, you will get it in decimals. So 50,000 divided by 4,40,000 into 100, you will get the answer as 11.36%. So this is the value of equity. Sorry, overall cost of capital of the firm. So this is how you need to solve the sum using net income approach. The first part is nowhere used. It is just used to find the interest and the net income. Once that is found out, we go to finding the value of debt, then value of equity. When you add both of them, you will get the value of the firm and the formula to find the overall cost of capital. If you have EBIT and V, you need to divide them and multiply with 100 to get the overall capital, cost of capital. Any doubts with this sum, anybody?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Was that clear for everyone? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's go for the next sum. Now, as I told you, it is a continuation of the first sum because I have to show you that graph. That's why the first three sums are of that manner. Okay, so let's go to the second sum. In the second sum, just see what is written in the above problem. Which was the above problem? The first one that we solved. Okay, so in the above problem, suppose that the firm has decided to increase the amount of debt by rupees 1 lakh and use the proceeds to retire equity. Find the new value of the firm and the cost of capital. So everything else will remain same in the problem. Only thing is they want to increase the debt by rupees 1 lakh. So earlier the debt was 2 lakh. Now they want to increase it by 1 lakh. So how much will be the debt now? Earlier,
3 lakh.
Yes, 3 lakh. Earlier it was 2 lakh plus increase of 1 lakh, it will be 3 lakh. So we are going to use that 3 lakh debt and calculate the value of the firm and the cost again. So we'll see how increase in debt has an impact on the value of the firm and the cost of capital. And everything else will remain same like problem number 1. So in problem 1, the EBIT was 50,000. We keep it the same as 50,000 less interest. Now the debt will be 3 lakh, 2 lakh of the previous and 1 lakh is what we have increased. So total debt will be 3 lakh. 10% is the rate of interest. So 10% of 3 lakh is 30,000. So your net income will be 50,000 minus 30,000, which is equal to 20,000. Is that okay till here?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Now we'll find the market value of debt and the market value of equity. So market value of debt is interest divided by cost of debt. Interest is 30,000. So I'll take 30,000 divided by the cost of debt. Like the previous sum, same we have to say take. So it was 10%, which is 0.1. So 30,000 divided by 0.1. Value of debt will be 3 lakh rupees. Value of equity, we have to take the net income. So here is the net income, 20,000 divided by the cost of equity, which is 12.5%. See, everything of the previous sum I'm taking only instead of 2 lakh debt, in the new sum we'll take 3 lakh debt. So rates will be same. So cost of equity was 12.5% in the previous sum. So the same we will take here. 12.5% is nothing but 0.125. So if I do 20,000 divided by 0.125, the value of equity will be 1 lakh 60,000. Total value of the firm V will be 3 lakh plus 1 lakh 60,000, which is 4 lakh 60,000. And K naught will be EBIT by V. So EBIT is 50,000 as it is, and value of the firm has become 4 lakh 60,000 now. So 50,000 divided by 4 lakh 60,000 into 100. If I do, I get 10.86%. So all of you just observe what has happened. In the previous sum, the value of the firm was 4 lakh 40,000. Now it is 4 lakh 60,000. It has increased. And in the previous sum, the cost of debt was 11.36 and now it is 10.86. That means it has decreased. Why the cost has decreased? Can anybody tell me? Because we are borrowing more, and the assumptions say cost of debt is cheaper than cost of equity. As well as you can observe in the sum also, the cost of debt is 10% and the cost of equity is 12.5%. When you borrow more and more debt, that means you're borrowing at a cheaper cost or a lesser cost, and you're not borrowing at higher cost. So when I'm borrowing more debt, if I increase my debt by 1 lakh, my cost will come down because the cost of debt is lesser than the cost of equity. And whenever the cost comes down, automatically the value of the firm will increase. Because yesterday when I taught you optimum capital structure, the definition of optimum capital structure only was where there is less overall cost of capital or weighted average cost, minimum weighted average cost of capital and maximum value of the firm. When you get this, you are having an optimum capital structure. So here you can see, compared to the previous one, the cost is minimum, and compared to the previous one, the value has increased from 4 lakh 40 to 4 lakh 60. Any doubts with this?
No, ma'am.
Let's do the third version of the same sum. So we are not doing 3 sums. Basically, we are doing the first sum only 3 times with little bit variations in that. And this is only with the first sum I'm showing like this. 4th, 5th are not variations. They are different sums altogether. Why I had to show the first sum like this? So that I can show you that graph which I showed you in the PPT. It actually works or no. Okay, now what the third sum is trying to say. Suppose that in the above problem, the amount of debt has been reduced by rupees 1 lakh. Now the amount of debt has been reduced by 1 lakh means what will be the new debt value? Anybody?
1 lakh.
1 lakh, correct. Don't do 3 lakh minus 1 lakh and say 2 lakh. We are seeing above problem means the first problem. The original debt was 2 lakh. We increased it by 1 lakh, it became 3 lakh. Original debt is 2 lakh. We decrease it by 1 lakh, it will become 1 lakh. So we are not going to reduce it from 3 lakh, but we are going to reduce it from the main problem. From 2 lakh, we are decreasing it to 1 lakh. Okay, it has been reduced by rupees 1 lakh. And a fresh issue of equity share is made. Find the value of the firm and the cost of capital. EBIT will remain as it is. Now debt has become 1 lakh because earlier first main problem we had 2 lakh. If we reduce it by 1 lakh, remaining is 1 lakh. 10% interest on 1 lakh is 10,000 rupees. So your net income will be 50,000 minus 10,000, which is equal to 40,000 rupees. Now we'll find the value of debt and value of equity so that we can add both and find the value of the firm. So value of debt is interest divided by cost of debt. Interest is 10,000 divided by cost of debt is 0.1. 10,000 divided by 0.1 if I do, you will get 1 lakh rupees, which is the value of debt. Cost of, market value of equity is net income, which is 40,000 rupees in this problem, divided by cost of equity, which is 0.125. When you do 40,000 divided by 0.125, you will get the value of equity, which is equal to 3,20,000 rupees. When I add both, the value of the firm, market value of debt plus market value of equity will be 4,20,000. Now we have to find the overall cost of capital. EBIT is same, 50,000 divided by 4,20,000 into 100. So when you solve this, we will get 11.09%. So this is the third case. In this case, now you see what has happened. The original value was 4,40,000. Now it has become 4,20,000. Whereas the original cost was 11.36. Now it has become 11.90, not 09. So what has happened? Cost has increased and the value has decreased. Why did this happen? Because we are borrowing less debt. When you borrow less, debt is a cheaper source of finance. You are borrowing it less and you are going for the costlier source of finance. So that's why the cost is increasing. More equity means you have to pay more cost. And when the cost will increase, obviously the value of the firm will decrease. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Now I will try to show you the graph possible here. So here we have the x-axis, y-axis and x-axis. So here we will have cost, and here we will have leverage, or I'll also call it as borrowings. Okay, in all the three sums, what were the borrowings? I will put it here. So first I will take the least borrowing. So which was the least in all the three cases where we borrowed less? In the third case, how much we borrowed? 1 lakh. Instead of writing full 1 lakh, I'll just write it as 1. Then we borrowed how much? 2 lakh and 3 lakh. Correct? So these were the borrowings: 1 lakh, 2 lakh and 3 lakh. Is that fine, all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, when you borrowed 1 lakh or 2 lakh or 3 lakh, what happened to the cost of equity and cost of debt? The percentage. Did you change 10% and 12.5% anywhere? See, here also I have taken 10 and here I have taken 12.5. Similarly, in the second problem also I have taken 10 and 12.5, and same is with the third. So, the graph said that cost of equity and cost of debt is constant. Therefore, they should match, right? They should be same. How much ever you borrow, it will not change. So, if I say that cost of debt, cost of equity was 12.5%. And cost of debt was 10%. So what will happen? Even if I borrow 1 lakh, it is 10%. Even if I borrow 2 lakh, it is 10%. Even if I borrow 3 lakh, it is 10%. Correct? If I put dots and show you, even if I borrow 1 lakh, it is 10%. Even if I borrow 2 lakh, it is 10%. And even if I borrow 3 lakh, it is 10%. Same is with the cost of equity, 1 lakh 12.5%, 2 lakh also the same rate, 3 lakh also the same rate. If I join these lines, I'll get a straight line. So cost of debt and cost of equity are constant, straight lines. But what is happening to overall cost of capital? When I borrow 1 lakh, it is 11.9%. So maybe here if I say is 11, so 11.9 will be somewhere here. Then if I borrow 2 lakh, it is 10.86%. So 10.86 for 2 lakh, which will be somewhere about 10 and in between 10 and 11. And in the 2 lakh case, it is 11.36. For 3 lakh, it is 10.86 and for 2 lakh, it is 11.36, which is here. So these are the three dots. If I join them, you can see the cost of debt is decreasing. So this is your, sorry, the overall cost is decreasing. So this is your K naught, which is the overall cost of capital. This is your KE, that is the cost of equity. And this straight line is your KD, which is the cost of debt. And the same thing I showed you on the graph. Are you understanding what I'm trying to say?
Yes, ma'am.
Just see the,
Yes, ma'am.
just see this graph. Cost of equity, cost of debt is constant, and as you go on borrowing more and more, your average cost of capital or the weighted average cost of capital decreases. And the same is happening in our graph also. As I borrow from 1 lakh to 2 lakh, 2 lakh to 3 lakh, the more I borrow, the less is the cost, because cost of debt is cheaper than equity. But debt and equity rates didn't change, they remain constant, so they are straight lines. So in the first sum or in this problem, I wanted to show you graphs. So I kept the data same and I only changed debt and showed you how it will look. Okay. This theory will hold good only if you follow all his assumptions. If you don't follow his assumptions, then the theory won't hold good. So he says, go on borrowing. As much as you borrow, the more will be your value of the firm and less will be the cost of capital. Okay. Can anybody tell me in real life, is it feasible? Can we just go on borrowing as much as we want?
No, ma'am.
No, because cost of the debt comes with risk, correct? And that risk, every company should have the appetite to have that much of risk. If they are not able to handle that much risk, they will surely collapse or close down. So that one assumption of having a riskless debt, which was there in the basic assumptions, I'll just show you. Here, this word, perpetual and riskless debt. Yesterday also I told you that you cannot have riskless debt because they assume it is riskless. NI approach, David is telling as much as you borrow, it's okay because there is no risk, nothing will happen. Borrow more and go on increasing your benefits. Your cost will decrease and you will go on increasing your benefits, which is not true in real sense. It is true only when his assumptions we adopt. In real life, more and more if you borrow, your risk will increase. And when your risk will increase, can anybody tell me what will happen if the risk will increase?
We may go under loss.
Okay. Okay, let us take one example. You all have invested in my company. I started a new company and you all are the shareholders of my company. You have invested. Now, once you have invested in my company, I tell you that I have 5 lakh borrowings and you all invest and we will start the company together. After 1 year, I increase my borrowings from 5 lakh to 10 lakh. And I inform you all about this. So what you will say, oh, you have increased the risk. The company has become risky. So when the company has become risky, your risk also has increased as an investor, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So can anybody tell me
Yes,
what
ma'am.
is the risk return policy? Do you know about risk return, how it goes? Higher the risk, what will happen to return? Higher the return. So as equity shareholders, you all will tell me, see, from 5 lakh, you have borrowed 10 lakh. You have increased the risk of the company. Higher the risk, higher the return. So if you're increasing the risk, we need more return. You will start demanding more. When you will start demanding more, I'll have to pay you more dividend and my cost of equity will increase. That will happen in real life situation where assumptions don't work. So from 10 lakh, if I borrow 15 lakh, again your risk will increase. You will say, see, you're going on borrowing, you're increasing the risk. So please increase the returns again. So as I borrow more and more, after a certain limit, equity shareholders won't sit quiet. They will say, you're increasing the risk. Either pay us more, increase our returns, or we are selling your shares and moving out. So if I have to keep my shareholders intact, I'll have to pay more and more cost of equity. That happens in real life, which his theory doesn't highlight because it is based on assumptions. Okay. I hope the first theory was clear and there are no doubts with the first problem. The 3 versions of the first problem that we did were also clear. Okay. Now, the table method which I showed you, the same we are going to use for all the net income approach problems. So if you have understood this table, how we have done, it is very easy to understand the next problems also. On Saturday, I'll take a class at 9 o'clock. Second.